it's funny because people will look at the growth that we've had in year one and they're like, what's your like crazy secret sauce? And I just will always come back to, I'm thinking about you. You are first, not me, and not how many views I'm going to get.
I'm pumped to have you in here today. You've, like I said, been blowing up on the scene, like seemingly kind of out of nowhere. And I was actually like looking through your LinkedIn posts and like really up till about 11 months ago, you didn't post much.
No.
You had one about joining acquisition.
Yep.
You had one about something else. And then it started happening and you really didn't start posting until that 6-hour video came out.
Yeah.
I noticed, which that video was crazy. I'm sure you get asked about it, but really quickly for the audience that doesn't know who you are, just quick, maybe 30 seconds, like who are you and what do you do?
My name is Caleb Ralston, and I was that classic character, similar to yourself, not as in-depth on the video production side, but I started in video really young. I was the kid that grabbed my mom's Canon PowerShot, which was a point-and-shoot camera and could record, I think, like 12 to 15-second clips at a time. And I would make funny little videos, little like skit comedy videos with my sister or with my friends in the backyard and stuff. And something actually that I talked about recently with somebody that I haven't mentioned is this was really early on in like internet video content. So early, you might remember this, but when YouTube came out, in addition to YouTube, all the comedians were building this thing called Funny or Die.
Do you remember that? I remember Funny or Die.
Yeah.
They had such great skits on there.
It was amazing. It ended up becoming, I'm pretty sure they ended up just making a YouTube channel. I think eventually they ended up like caving in to the powers that be. But Funny or Die was another platform where I saw an opportunity to post funny little skits with me and my buddies that maybe kids in school would see and thought were funny. Nobody actually ever watched them. But I got into this whole internet content world. And at the same time, I was going to this church in Marysville, Washington, where the head of video production at the church is Sean Cannell, who a lot of people know of now as like the guy who teaches everybody how to get started on YouTube and how to make a living there. And I was fortunate enough that for whatever crazy serendipitous reason, we were both in the same tiny little town. And he introduced me to a man named Gary Vaynerchuk via his book, Crush It, which is an interesting choice for a youth leader in a church to give to a kid. But I read more fucks in that book than I had heard in my entire life up until that point. But it was game changing. It completely shifted how I viewed things. I thought this thing was a hobby, and now suddenly I saw a vehicle for like my life and for income. And so I decided then and there, this is what I'm going to do. And I started in the fitness industry, worked through that, worked at a software company, worked with cannabis brands, went out and actually ended up working for the man himself, Gary V, worked for one of his publishing companies, then got pulled onto his personal team and traveled with him for 2 years doing that. That was incredible. Then I started working for this massive Fortune 500 company that owns a shitload of liquor brands that we all love and consume on the regular basis, building out the direct-to-consumer team there. That's something that I don't talk about as much, but that was an interesting period. And then I moved to Las Vegas, Nevada, and joined a pretty prominent company. At the time, they weren't as big, but now 2 very large individuals in the business creator space grew their team, their media team. I was employee number 1 from 0 to 18 people. Got a lot of impressions, views, subscribers, built a pretty big brand. And then in November of 2024, I did the terrifying thing, I'm sure you can relate, and a lot of people listening, of going out on my own to see if I got it like that.
What was the scariest part of transitioning from like a 9-to-5 type job to saying, you know what, it's time to go and I'm going to try this?
I think what a lot of people will assume is that I went into this being like, feeling like I'm a business expert because of the people I've worked for. And over the first year, I think there's a lot of mistakes and problems that I've avoided that most people make in their first year because of who I've worked for. But I actually went into it feeling like I have more examples of all the ways that I could fuck up, right? The people that I've worked for in the past, they've met with so many different business owners and coached them on how to improve and I'm talking like, small businesses, sure. But like when I was at Vayner, I was watching Gary meet with like Budweiser, Pepsi, like these mega brands, like really legit brands, and walking through and all these different things that they could fuck up or whatever. And so I think I went into it being like, okay, I have a roadmap of what I should try to avoid, but I also know that there is a reality that I might not make it, right? The majority of business owners don't make it past their first year. And so I went into it with that mindset, and that sounds probably scary and like a negative mindset, but I actually used it as, I'm just going to take a year to experiment and fuck around and see, right? And then Trevor decided, I want to also be a part of this experiment and help make content for you. That started making things more serious. But before that, I just viewed it as like, I'm going to be an old man one day on my deathbed, and I don't want to look back at this era of my life and wonder what would have happened if I tried it for myself.
No, I love that. I feel that too. It's kind of the same thing. I mean, for me, so I actually pretty much only did my own thing. Okay. So at 17, I got hired on to shoot commercials and like run a studio here in town.
Damn.
Straight out of high school. And then I ended up being like second in charge of the studio. I was hiring people. It was super weird because I was like 17, interviewing, awesome. 30, 40, 50-year-olds with families.
Sounds like Trevor, honestly.
And I'm like, sorry, you can't work here. Like, it was so weird. But I learned a lot. I actually served a church mission for the LDS church, came back, they were out of business, started my own thing. So I was like, well, I learned that I could get, because right near the end of it, I went off of hourly and they put me on like per project, and I learned a lot about like that part of the business. And I was like, oh, like I can do this for other people. But when I started, right, like this was what, 2009, I think, is when I got back from my mission and started doing videos for businesses. Businesses just didn't get it. They're like, we don't need videos. We don't need social. We don't need this. And I'm like, yes, you do. And so it took a while for them to finally catch on. Yeah. And so I've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, you said 20 years?
Yeah, 20 years professionally.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And so it's been fun, but I think opening your business is like, it's just scary, right? Because
it's terrifying.
Well, and then the content you've been putting out is, I would say, vulnerable, right? Because you're just being as open as possible. And, one of your posts when you went to launch this video, you were talking, it's been, the first video you did, right? The 6-hour one was your biggest investment in videos. You spent it was like 219 hours or something like that.
Some crazy shit like that, yeah.
18 hours of footage to cut down to like 6 hours of content, and then putting out a 6-hour video. People would think, man, that's insane. Like, he needs to just do shorts or whatever, right? But you focus on being super vulnerable and giving it all away. What was kind of like the reason behind doing this huge 6-hour video?
The principle, because I see some people that are replicating this right now, and some people are getting insane results, and some are getting barely any results. And the thing that I try to talk about, we released a video in December about like why I did this and how people can do it for themselves. The biggest point is, don't do it if that's what everybody else is doing. The reason why we did it is, one, I've had this idea for a while now, just because I've been asked, hey, do you have any resources online with your thoughts around brand positioning, content strategy, team development, all of that? And the answer was always no. But the second part was looking at what other people that speak about our subject matter are doing on YouTube. And it was fundamentally different. Most of them had maybe a 6-hour course, usually a little bit shorter, behind a paywall. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. Like that's how a lot of this industry makes their money, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if I want to stand out, I got to do things differently. A kick I've been on is describing this old meme that some of us older folks will remember from Facebook days, back when Facebook was really cool. There was a meme that went around of a bunch of penguins in the Arctic, and then there was a polar bear just standing amongst the penguins, right? And it was just like looking around. And he stands out. He's completely different than all the other penguins. And what I see so many people doing with their content on YouTube is they show up as another fucking penguin. And they get frustrated that they're not having any good results. But it's like, okay, if you're entering a space where there are already people who are providing really useful, good information, you got to do something fucking phenomenal in order to stand out. Because people don't need more information, right? So we viewed it as a way of making a splash in the very early days. We had put out one video before that. It was like 54 minutes, but we viewed this as like the opportunity to potentially do something completely different. And again, potentially, this was all a guess, to your point of like how I was unsure of whether this was the right move or not before we posted it. It was a guess that this was going to lead to people talking about it and spreading it.
Well, and it did, right?
Way more than I could have ever imagined, man.
Yeah, no, it's been crazy to see. Like I remember just like scrolling on Instagram, I believe, and then all of a sudden like you popped up for the first time, and like the stuff you're saying like related with me really well. It's like what stuff I always talk about to clients, and I was like, who's this guy? And then another post, and then the video, we saw that one, and I was like, dang. And then we started consuming some of the content, and it was just, like actually even in your video, I was like, because we've been thinking about doing something like that. We're like, hey, let's just really like create this, not a course, but like, let's just dive in deep into like, this is how you can make money as a business through podcasting.
Yeah.
And, like we're big fans of like giving, like we don't hide anything. We're not like, oh, you have to pay us to learn this. It's just like, what answers? You don't even have to use our studio. You can use a different place.
Yeah.
Come here. We'll give you all the advice in the world. I don't care. Like we're not gatekeepers of anything. And, I actually sat down to try it, but the problem is it's a lot of work to do that. and the thing that works so well with you is like, once again, you pour your soul into it. Like you can tell, like you actually care about what you're creating. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into like, how do we tell this story? And then the editing, obviously you guys killed it. You and Trevor, like
Trevor, not me on the editing. Yeah, not me, not in any way, but yes.
And so I think you'll see a lot of people probably trying to do it, and they probably won't get great results because they're not willing to put in the work.
Dude, oh man, you just hit a kind of a salty spot for me right there. Yes. And I want to preface this with, I'm not the work your face off, abandon everything in your life guy. That's not me. I love my family more now than I ever have, right? Which sounds kind of wild. I used to prioritize work above everything. That has shifted. But on the flip side, I think knowing that there's like, I can't remember what the stat is. It's way more than this, but I'm just going to say this number because it's like probably 20 times this. There's at least 20,000. No, there's hundreds of thousands of hours of content being uploaded to YouTube every day. If there's that much shit being put online, do we really think that if we spend 15, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour outlining something, that it's going to stand out amongst all of that? Like, and even more so, the other thing that I'm seeing people make the mistake on is we're opening up a big one here. They see characters like Sam with Dan Martell, right? Or me in previous scenarios, or other characters. And they'll point to these individuals and talk about how great they are and how, Sam does all of the writing for Dan and all this stuff. And they use that as an example. Because I think that there's this like weird disconnect that people have. They recognize that if they phone it in their business and just have their whole team do everything and they as the founder aren't actually in it, operating from the beginning, eventually you want to be out of it, but in the beginning you got to be in it. They have this lazy approach to it. They know like, I keep struggling with my fitness journey. I keep saying on podcasts, I'm getting back into lifting. And then 2 weeks later, I'm not really into lifting anymore. Like, I only can make progress if I actually show up to the fucking gym and put in the effort, right? And I think what I'm seeing a lot of people over this last year try to do is they want to build a huge personal brand that leads to massive outcomes for their business, and they want to do it without putting in any effort. What other area of your life have you ever gotten amazing results without effort?
Exactly.
I don't have any.
Well, one thing I'll say is like when I'm talking to people about this type of stuff is like you're constantly being consistent, whether you know it or not, right? You're either choosing to consistently not perform, not put in the work, not do the things you're supposed to, or you're consistently choosing to do the things, right? Like I didn't get my shapely body overnight either, right? I consistently didn't work out. I consistently ate bad food for years. And if I want to change that, I have to shift what I'm consistent in.
Same,
so
brother.
It's not hard to be consistent. You're constantly being consistent.
That's a good point.
You just have to choose to be consistent in the way that's going to move the needle, hopefully. Right. And, one of the things you talked about was like founders, right? Like founders need to show up more. They have to, like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be on camera, right? Like when we open up the studio, actually for the past like 18 years, I've like almost been in almost no piece of content ever because I don't want to. But then once we opened up the studio, it's like, okay, well, like if we believe in this and that this is really good for businesses, for building relationships, plus creating content that connects, I guess I should be doing this too. And then I got more used to it and became a little bit easier. But like, what would you say to that founder out there that's like, oh, I don't need to be part of it and doing the work?
Well, one might be right. Not everybody should build a personal brand. I actually think there's way more people out there that are putting in the investment of time, money, effort into building a personal brand for no reason. Because if you can't articulate why you're doing it, then why would you do it? If you don't have a goal on the other end of it that is really clear, I don't know if it's the best use, because there's very few business cases that you could present to me that we couldn't come up with another way to grow the business without building a personal brand from the founder. It's very effective. I want to be very clear. It is more and more every year becoming more and more effective. Each generation as we get younger care more and more about what the founder, CEO, operator, public figure of a company believes and how they operate. That's how they're making their purchase decisions. But it's not the only way. And so that's the first thing that I would say. The second is if your scenario that you defined, which is like, this seems like a reasonable thing to do to scale the business the way that I want, especially considering it's a podcast studio. But you said something that was interesting to me, which is I don't want to be on camera. And so the first thing that I would ask you is, what would have to be true in order for you to enjoy being on camera?
For me, definitely with self-image. I was like too concerned, like, oh, I'm too fat, I'm too this, I'm too that, right? And then for a while, for me, it was like trying to create polished content of like being like a YouTuber just wasn't, that's not me. Like I don't love being in front of the camera. I have found a passion more for this because we're just having conversations, right? And I try to not even think about creating a podcast. It's more like I just want to talk to people, meet cool people, learn things, provide some support to like our clients and future clients. And that's been a lot easier. So this style content made it a lot easier for me to then translate to pulling out my phone or creating content or doing some like skits or stuff like that, because now I'm a little more used to it.
What we just described is the right way to start. What a lot of people do is they look at their favorite creator online, hear exactly what they're saying, and do exactly what their whole team of 20 people potentially, right? They set out with that ambition. But what you just described is like, I'm going to inch my way into this. I'm going to get more comfortable doing it through conversations because I like talking with people, meeting new people, hearing about them. That makes it more enjoyable for me. And then over time, you get more comfortable. Why? Because what we just described is branding. You branded filming content. You paired filming content with something you enjoy, which is conversations. And over time, now there's a different association that comes up when you think of filming content. And you can remove the previous thing that you were pairing yourself with, and that brand still exists. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like, I talk about brand and branding a lot within building your personal brand and content, but you can apply branding to anything, literally anything in life that you don't like doing.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like a lot of the businesses that we work with, I'd say probably 70% of our clientele, they're pretty new to creating content.
Okay.
So they don't even know how to get started. Like, what's the right direction? What's the right voice? The thing that I typically say is like, well, first off, who are we speaking to and why are we doing this, right? Mm-hmm. If we're like in the world of podcasting, who is that voice? Like, who are we trying to uplift? Who are we trying to help? Who are we trying to support? If that's your clients, what do they look like? And then from there, we can kind of reverse engineer a little bit and go, okay, well, what are their needs? What are the conversations they need to have? What are conversations you're already having? But like, what advice would you give a company that's like, hey, we need to rebrand, but we don't even know where to start?
Start with the problems that your customer faces and orient everything around solving those, or more specifically, helping your audience solve those problems. That's what builds trust. I believe that trust is just the measure in which somebody believes that you are going to meet or exceed expectations that they have based on previous behavior. And so if you continually define a problem and then help your audience solve it, they're going to continue to believe that you're going to continue to help them solve problems. And so when you go from making free content to making them aware of an offer, all an offer is a problem plus solution, right? The solution to a problem, really. They have a high belief that you're going to help them solve that bigger problem that now they have to pay you for. And so that's where I tell everybody to start. Make a list of problems, 5 to 10, 15 ideally. And once you start there, then you want to pair that problem with a solution. And that is what I call your special gift. This is the gift you're giving your audience, is the problem they have and your unique solution. And then what I typically actually recommend is get started on that. Just do that. Don't worry about anything else. Get that repetition going. Like the biggest thing that I heard from a really top personal trainer, I come from bodybuilding background, is he was saying his first 2 weeks with a client isn't about lifting. He literally will tell them, I want you to just drive to the gym, walk inside, and then go home. Because that's the biggest hurdle for most people. Once I'm like, for me, I know for me, once I'm at the gym, I actually really enjoy it. But I make a million excuses to not go. And so I would just say, start with doing this, get that exercise and that habit down of defining problems, outlining your solution, and shipping the content. But then the 2.0 version of this is you're going to want to wrap this gift, right? You don't want to be the dad on Christmas who grabbed the gift last minute and didn't wrap it for the kiddos, right? We want to wrap this in a packaging, in a wrapping paper that is going to be appealing to the customers and audience that we're trying to reach. And so that's really where I recommend people start. I really would also throw in, don't overcomplicate it. If you're debating whether or not to do something, instead of taking the week to decide, fucking do it, put it out, get the insights, and then decide.
Yeah, you had a quote that was going to pull up later, but now that we're on that topic of something along the lines you said was, you don't know what great content is until you put it out there and see how your audience reacts to it.
Yes.
I really liked that perspective because it's true. Like oftentimes, like even myself, before I first started putting out content, I was like, nobody cares about what I have to say. Right. And that was like, I think one of my biggest fears is like, I have nothing valuable to say to people, even though I've done this for 17, 20 years, you know, I thought that people wouldn't care or listen or wouldn't shift their perspective. But when I started putting out content of just trying to help and just go like, hey, this is what I've seen work. This is what I believe works. This is what I think could help you. We started getting clients or non-clients being like, hey, when you said that, my whole mindset shifted. And I was like, oh.
That's cool.
A like or a share would have been nice too, but you know how people are. A lot of people are silent observers, especially the people that are going to spend money with you. So
the most silent.
they just sit there and watch.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think you've done a really good job of a few things. One, since we're talking about trust, you've done a really good job of building that trust online. Right, to the point that like just from watching content, not meeting you, I've already talked about you to a few clients, right? And I guess, how do you think brands need to go about building trust online? Like, what's your perspective on that? Because I think too many people focus on like, I need to be trendy, I need to talk in hooks. Like I see a lot of actually influencers talk about like, whenever I have a conversation, I just speak in hooks now. And I'm like, well, then are you even really having conversations? Like, it feels like too rehearsed. What advice do you give to brands about like, this is how you build trust online?
So I've uncovered another layer in the onion on trust. Everybody's building trust right now. Everything that you do is building trust. Trust is not a implicit positive or negative. It just is. It is amoral, right? And so you can trust that somebody is going to do harm to you. You can trust that they are going to do good to you. So if you continually show up speaking in hooks and just using wide shit that has no depth to it, you're building trust that you're going to continue to do that, right? If we agree on the definition of trust, that it's the amount that somebody believes that a person or thing, a car can do the same function, is going to meet or exceed expectations based on what they've done in the past, then what you're doing right now is going to inform what they trust you will do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so the next thing that you have to figure out is, what kind of trust do I want? What do I want them to trust that I will do? And that is where it comes back to the solving problems thing. I just want people to trust that I'm going to help them solve their problems. And if I do that, I will not have an issue figuring out building my business. I'm not saying that I'm going to be the biggest titan in the world. I have no desire to be that. But if you really, really, like the people listening, if they actually hear what I just said and actually operationalize that, that's all you need to do. If you really understand that every action that you are doing is creating some form of trust in a positive or in a negative direction, well, then it changes the actions that we do.
I like that. I don't think I think about that enough with our business. I do think about that with like my kids, right? Like if I say I'm going to do something, I make sure I'm going to do it so that way they don't learn to know that like, oh, if dad says he's coming home at 6, he's not coming home till 8 or 9.
It's full of shit. Yep.
Right. Or if dad said he's going to take me to go do this, right? Like, you know, I put a lot of emphasis on especially my oldest son. I have 2 kids, a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old, and one plays hockey. And he has a lot of trust that like, I will be at every game. I will be at pretty much every practice. I will be there. I will take you to everything, you know, and that was really important. But when it comes to business, I guess we probably lose a little bit of that mindset of like, we need our clients to know that we're here for every step of the way. And that is in every action that we take.
Yeah. And like, oh man, there's so much that you could unpack with this. But if you really granular thing on the client front, if you don't want your clients to expect you to respond within 60 seconds of them texting you, don't text them within 60 seconds, right? Like little things like this that over time they start, I hate using this word because it's what everybody says, but they compound. It's like compounding interest. And the more that you add these little things up, you start realizing, wow, I have more control over the direction that people trust me, or what direction people trust that I'm going to go in, more than I ever thought.
I'm so bad about that, especially with starting this location. Okay. The second somebody texts me, or it's like 2 a.m. and they're texting me, I'm texting them back. And then, you know, I got to the point with the other business of the video production of like, I had my boundaries and this, like, I'll respond to you in this time frame and whatever. But I kind of fell back into like that new entrepreneurship mindset of like, I got to scramble and respond as quick as possible. But I've been setting those boundaries and trying to retrain. And in the beginning, we definitely had clients that probably weren't the best clients for like who we are.
Always.
And what we want to be.
Yeah, always in the beginning.
Yep. We slowly weeded some of them out and started setting these new, like, I guess, boundaries and expectations of this is how we do things. This is the relationship, the dynamic. This is who we are. Yeah. And because this is how we are, we'll find people that like it, or we'll find people that don't like it, and they can go somewhere else.
Yes.
And another thing that like has been pretty impressive to watch from outside is I think oftentimes people feel like it's too late, right? Social media is saturated, YouTube saturated. I can't build anything. But then here you come, and in less than a year, like I think, especially in the world of marketing, and I think a lot of business owners, but the creative departments, which is obviously who you're really targeting, is you're going to become one of the biggest names. Like I feel like you've already blown up, and like I think you're just going to get bigger and bigger. It's really impressive to see, you know, and I think that's an inspiration. Like people need to realize it's not too late. Like if you pour your heart and soul into what you do and you really care, you're going to connect with more people. I know you've already talked about this a little bit, but like, you know, were you surprised to blow up as much as you have? Were you surprised to be, you know, you've been on some huge podcasts, you've been doing some big things. Like I said, like, I think you're going to be one of the biggest names out there in this field.
That means a lot. I appreciate it. I don't take that comment lightly. I am working on better self-image, for one. So what you said earlier, I totally resonate with. I don't think of myself that way in any way, shape, or form. I have always been the character who is nobody has said, I don't think there's anybody in my entire life that would go, Caleb's cocky. I think I'm the opposite of that. And so I never expected this. I didn't expect this in 10 years, let alone a year. And I think that's actually played to our advantage. I think it's funny because a lot of people online, and I think that this is the key, is everybody is different, and so different things work for different people. And I want to make sure that's clear. But a lot of people talk about setting these insane, audacious goals and huge expectations and then aligning your actions to it. And I think that works for a lot of people. For me, I'm actually the opposite. When I competed in powerlifting, I had, you know, at the time I was in high school, I was going for an American record on the deadlift. And I knew what that number was, and I knew I had to do above that. Didn't have a specific number in mind, and I didn't tell anybody. My sister, my mom, and my dad were the only people that knew about this meet until after it was done. I didn't tell any of my best friends. My training part, nobody. And I think for me, if you were to ask Trevor how we optimize our film sessions, our run of show, even like when we're going to do like a fucking 2 hours, 12-hour days filming, 24 hours straight of filming, I'm always trying to reduce the amount of pressure on myself. And I don't know if maybe that's a bad thing. I don't know. But I have found that to be incredibly useful for me. And part of pressure that I've seen a lot of people go into building their personal brand with is I need to be at X number in the first year. And I think that causes you to do really bad behaviors. I think it causes you to be impatient and make impatient-like content. It causes you to try to take shortcuts. It causes you to, instead of, like, it's funny because people will look at the growth that we've had in year one and they're like, what's your like crazy secret sauce? And I just will always come back to, I'm thinking about you. You are first, not me, and not how many views I'm going to get. Okay? It's not how many of you, it's you. Every single time that we make a video, we're thinking about a very specific audience member that needs this problem solved, and that's how we're making it. We're not going to the drawing board. We've done one video, I think, this last year where we were trying to be a little bit wider. Other than that, that's not our game. Now, I'm sure as the strategy evolves and we grow, we're probably going to start dabbling in that 10 to 25 minute, shorter video, more YouTube-y style, more as an experiment just to see if I can show up in a way that doesn't feel to me that way, right? But yeah, this is a word vomit and a verbal processing to the final point, which is I would recommend that people go into building their personal brand not expecting any meaningful outcomes for the first 36 months. 36 months, 3 years. And people talk about wanting to hit 10K followers in their first 6 months. No. Go into it expecting nothing meaningful for the first 3 years. And if you do that, more often than not, you'll pop way further or way sooner than that because you have the right actions, behaviors, and mentality to build this in a way that is actually useful for the audience, not in a way that's just trying to attention hack.
I love that. I talk a lot about that with our clients of like, if your goal of starting a podcast is to get famous, we're not the right studio for you.
Bad goal.
I can't help you do that. One, I've never done it. Two, even if I did, I probably wouldn't push you in that direction because I'd rather you help 10 individuals and transform their lives and let them become clients of yours and make a bigger impact than just trying to get random views on YouTube. So we've always been similar vein of thought of we focus on your client, the problem that they have. Let's solve it. Let's talk to them. And I always say, like, think about that one client that you just spoke to recently that had a big issue. They were stressed out and you helped them. What was that conversation like?
Yeah.
How do we translate that into the video? How do we translate that into the conversations we're having versus worrying about, I'm going to do this trendy whatever just to get views? We've dabbled a little bit on like creating some funnier content recently. Which is great. Which I've been anti forever. I'm like, screw funny content. I only want to educate. I only want to help. But our clients seem to like it because it shows our personality a little bit more. And then it's mainly our clients that actually comment on it too, which has been cool to see because they're engaging with us more versus when we put educational stuff out there, they don't comment. And I don't care about the comments and the vanity metrics, and we try to tell our clients that. Yeah. But it does feel nice to see them.
Totally. So a couple things on that. The interesting part is they're not mutually exclusive. Educational content is not a type of content, it's an outcome. And so it is our job as educators to use whatever tools we have available to us to increase the odds that the audience is educated. How do we know the audience was educated? They changed what they did after watching. And for a large portion of society, humor gets through to them better than something more dry and direct, right? Like a thing, I'm obsessed with getting like tiny little tactics from people that you would never expect. Steve Martin, amazing actor, Cheaper by the Dozen, right? Stand-up comedian. I love that man. He's hilarious. His it's called an autobiography when they write it themselves, right?
Yeah.
His autobiography, I can never remember if it's biography or auto. His autobiography, he talks about how in the early days of doing his stand-up, he tested different methods. And he started noticing when he would make fun of people in the crowd, they were tense and they weren't as loose with their laughter, right? Because they were always wondering, am I next, right? You know, me being a tall guy at shows who has a beard and is bald, I catch a lot of attention. That's my fear all the time. It's like, I love going to stand-up shows, but I don't love getting called out, right? It's not my favorite. And what he noticed is when he switched to self-deprecating humor and he made fun of himself rather than the audience, they loosened up and the laughter just flowed. And so what I took from that is, one, I've always been pretty self-deprecating since I read that book. I immediately was like, cool, because then I started noticing, oh, when I'm on set and somebody delivers a line in a way that I don't like, if I make it about how they fucked up the line, they're going into their turtle shell. If I make it about how I fucked up the focus, even if I didn't, well, then it was my fault. And they're not overthinking everything. But then I also started to think, oh, there are different mechanisms or ways of being and delivering our message that increase the receivability of the message, whether it's a joke and the way that it's received is by laughing, or it's an insight and the way it's received is by changing what we do. Either way, there are things that we can do that increase the odds that the outcome that we want occurs. And so with educational content, it's not I make educational content. It's actually I make content that is optimizing around trying to get the audience to be educated, which means change their behavior. If they don't, then it was just entertainment content. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so like the humor thing, I fucking love. I don't think of myself as that. I don't think I'm funny. I'm more situationally like funny. Like I can comment on something, but I'm not a joke guy. But I try to inject it as much as I can, making fun of myself in the content. And now that I've said, you may have noticed it before, but now that I've said it, you'll definitely see it.
Yeah. I do the same thing. I do a lot of self-deprecation.
It's the beard. I mean, guys with beards, we're very self-deprecating.
We like when we would do videos or whatever, and you have a client that's like, oh, can you like get rid of my chins? I'm like, oh, I can only add chins like how I added chins to myself.
Dude, yes.
Or I'm like, here, I'll give you my body instead.
Yes.
And then they just laugh,
Yes.
right? And it's a good way to diffuse the situation. But when you're talking about that, I was thinking about this moment. I was filming for a client, and they hired Kevin Hart to be the keynote speaker.
Sick.
And one of the things that always stuck with me is he would talk about like he would go to black comedy clubs and try that material. And then he would take it to white comedy clubs and try the material and be like, okay, well, black people found this funny, white people found this funny. And then he would slowly find the mixture to find, okay, where everybody likes me.
Interesting.
And so that always stuck with me because I think about that also with kind of business of like, you know, we're here primarily for business owners, but we also work with content creators. We also work with some other people. So we kind of test of like, yes, this is our main priority, but we also want to be here and support you guys because we work also with a lot of actually podcast producers and videographers that don't have spaces.
Yep.
And so we have very fine lines of like, where like your clients are your clients. We're never going to step on your toes. I've worked with marketing companies for years. We know how this works. How do we help you? How do we help you grow your business? How do we support you and create content that kind of still connects to them, but it's more focused towards our clients? And so we're constantly trying to test things too. And we're like, let's try this and see what happens. If people like it, cool.
We talk about the 75-25 rule, which is 75% should be deep content, 20% should be niche-wide content, 5% should be personal. And what you just articulated is niche-wide content. It's stuff that does serve your ideal customer within your niche, but it serves a broader individual within your niche. And so it does participate in both worlds, but it's still oriented around your ideal customer. So I love it. That's awesome.
So I'm going to pull up a few quotes of some things that you said to kind of go over and kind of dive into it a little bit deeper.
Here we go.
One of the things we've talked about a few times is kind of relatability, trust, and standing out. I think often you see everybody's using ChatGPT, and you can tell that all their scripts are using ChatGPT, and it sounds horrible.
Yeah, it's dog shit.
there's no personality. Like you can always tell, right? And then all their posts have the same little green check marks. At least tell ChatGPT to take that off.
Dude.
Like at least tell ChatGPT to do that.
Say it louder for the people in the back.
But one of the things that you said recently was, relatability is the unfair advantage against AI. Like I think people are scared that they have to use AI. They're scared that it's going to kind of replace them. Can you dive a little bit deeper into that?
To the relatability, yes. The AI replacing us, that is not my subject matter expertise, and I'm terrified about it all the time. The relatability thing, I just think that in a world where we have been trying to scale our brands and our awareness off of remarkable things, AI is going to, take the cake on that one. I don't think that we're going to outcompete. Right now, it's still obvious, for a lot of people, it's still obvious when it's an AI-generated piece of content. But I'm seeing more and more where people are completely being duped. And so I just think that we're going to be desensitized to those things. And what we're looking for, I think, a lot of people will hear what I say and they're going to be like, that's why, selfie videos are rising again on Instagram right now. No, all that is it's everyone's been going this direction. And so we're going to go this direction. And then guess what? We'll go back to high produced, like it'll always ebb and flow. I think the deeper part is I think people feel so disconnected more than ever before that content that feels not like you're teaching at me, but you're talking with me and feels more human, like I'm sitting down with you, I think that is going to pierce through a lot more now. I think a lot of people have built their brand just sharing amazing W's that they've had, all these amazing successes. They show the private jet that they're renting. They show, the Lambo that they're leasing or whatever. And I think that is no longer going to be as effective because we are all completely tuning that shit out. We can see it every day. There's tons of people that are faking shit online. And I just think that the more that you expose the real human that you are, the more of a chance you have at standing out. And part of exposing the real human that you are means not only sharing the W's, but sharing mistakes. And being able to expose that side of you to your audience, I believe, ends up bringing more depth of connection, not less. More trust that you are who you say you are, not less.
I worked with an influencer who was, growing really fast.
Okay.
And then she kind of plateaued and she stopped. And she came into the studio and we chatted for a while. I looked at her page. I was like, within like 20 seconds, I was like, you want to know why? Look at all your recent posts. Everything's perfect. You're always at the gym. You're always happy to be at the gym. I was like, look at what you did when you were first doing this. You're being real. You're talking about like how you don't want to go to the gym. I was like, but you've gone from being this underdog to being picture perfect. And with storytelling, if you don't have an underdog, if you don't have some problem to overcome, nobody's going to be involved in that story, right? If you watch a movie and it's like the person woke up happy, the day was happy, life was happy, the end, that's not very interesting.
No.
We need problems. We need to see you overcome them. And so with the content you create, you have to share those stories too. Yeah. We try to find that happy medium of like, we'll talk about even some problems that we've had in the studio of like, oh, we had a drive failure, right? But this is what we did to make things right. This is what we did to, in the future, overcome this. And so I think, like you were talking about, like, right, businesses just need to find that way to become more human because, I think soon it's going to be AI created avatars with AI created content, with AI created posts, with AI created people responding to it, with AI responses to that. It's just AI talking to AI. So the more that you get away from that and you become more human, and I think we've been in that push of going back to like more in-person events, more FaceTime. That's why I like the podcasting, especially if you can get the person here versus Zoom.
Way better than Zoom.
Yeah, you get to actually be around them. One of the things you talked about, you said there are 3 levers you can pull to stand out with your personal brand: contrarian take, delivery, wrapping paper. Most people focus on delivery and wrapping paper. They tweak hooks, chase formats, and they obsess over thumbnails. But the biggest lever you can pull is your contrarian take.
Yes.
Can you dive in deeper to that?
Yeah. Most people that are deciding to build their personal brand and are going to make content are going to talk about a subject matter that is already talked about. And so if it is already talked about, there is probably some creators who own that lane. why should anybody listen to you on this, right? Like, what are you bringing to the table that's different than the million other characters talking about building their personal brand? And so I really advocate for people to identify what this contrarian take, contrarian belief, contrarian approach is, because I think it is the number one way to make a splash in a marketplace. And this is for personal brands and also like company CPG like brands, B2B brands. Like it works both ways. Savage Fenty is a great example of this. This is Rihanna's female lingerie company. And they came onto the scene in a world where everybody marketed to one female body type in the lingerie world. And they were like, we believe, it's a wild contrarian take, honestly. It's insane that it was a contrarian take, but their contrarian take was that all women of all shapes and sizes should be able to feel good in different lingerie. And they fucking got to over $2 billion within 2 years because they saw something that others did not see, right? Gary, the man that I talk about all the time, he came onto the scene and he was like, there's this crazy thing called social media, Facebook and YouTube. When every company on the Fortune 500 and 100 list weren't even thinking about it. They're just now starting to invest in these platforms, right? And so I think it is the best way for you to be able to, really what you're doing is you're drawing a contrast between you and competition, right? You're drawing the difference, you're differentiating yourself from you and everybody else. And the other thing that I will say is, actually, this is a perfect example. I was talking to a friend of mine. He has a podcast agency where he helps people put together their podcast to grow their business. And he was doing a lot of 3 tips to make your podcast better, how to improve your lighting, how to make your sound better. And good clips, but there's a million people making those. And he was asking me what I think his content strategy should be. And I just asked him at the end of the call, unrelated to that. So we talked about it or whatever, then we did some, life updates, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the call, I was like, hey, I'm thinking about maybe starting my own podcast, and I just don't want to be like every other asshole who does it. What are the things that I should avoid? What are the dumb things that you see people doing in the industry? This motherfucker went on a 3-minute tirade that was perfect. It flowed so well. I was wildly engaged. He had no ums or ahs, no pauses, no needing, because this was from here, not here. And when I share my contrarian take, which is that I believe that business owners and entrepreneurs who are trying to grow their business through their personal brand, they should optimize for trust, not virality. I fundamentally, like at my core, I believe that. When I came onto the scene, all you saw on YouTube and on Instagram was how to go viral. And it fucking pissed me off. It made me angry. Why? Because I saw what that actually led to for most business owners. Most business owners would chase these vanity metrics and they'd fucking crush. They'd be getting tons of followers, tons of views, and no more sales. Oftentimes actually lower in sales than previously. And so I started getting frustrated because I had friends who were investing in these people that were saying this shit, paying them, doing a year or 2 years with them, and then realizing this was all for nothing. I built a prison, not a personal brand. And you can see it right now. I'm probably more fired up than I've been on any other subject. Maybe the amount of effort into content earlier, but that comes through. And so if you identify what that is, then if it's true to you and you actually feel it, your passion around it and the amount that you care comes through. You said it earlier, not me. You talked about how it's clear how much I care. It's true, but I wouldn't be able to do that if I wouldn't have identified this. If I was just telling you 5 ways to make your hooks better, fuck that, man. I have no passion around that. That doesn't matter, right? And so I really encourage people, try to figure this out. And if you're trying to figure out what this is, I have an exercise. It's the 2-column approach. On the left side, you're going to write out all the things that your competitors say or do that you detest, that you're like, it gets your blood boiling, your hair stands up. You're like, what the fuck? And then on the right side, you're just going to write out your take on that, what you think is right. And if you do that, you're going to come away with, most people will have 2 to 5 points. I started making content with 3 contrarian takes that I tested. I had 2 others. But you have no idea what they are because you don't remember them because they didn't stick. What I did is I tested to see what does the audience, but more importantly, what does my ideal customer resonate with the most? And I started hopping on discovery calls and noticing everybody was saying how much they love the fact that I am preaching to optimize for trust, not getting millions of views. So I was like, there's something to this. So I tripled down on that one and left the other two. I'll still share them, but that's not my big point, right? And so that is what I encourage people to do. And I encourage them, test it. Do 3 months of content where you talk about all three and see which one resonates. How do you know what is resonating? People are going to comment on your content quoting you. People are going to DM you talking about how this changed the way that they approach their whatever strategy. They're going to reach out to you and want to work with you. And they're going to say, the reason why I want to work with you is because everybody else is telling me this and you're saying something different. And once you get that signal, that's when you pour all the gas on it.
Yeah, I like that. That's what, for us as well, I think is why people come to our studio, is because we have content all the time where I just like say, screw going viral. It doesn't mean anything. Like, we want you to build connections with real people. We want you to have real conversations that are going to impact lives. And instead of focusing on how many likes and shares I get, like, we use an example. Like, I have an episode that did 30 views, right? Most people be super bummed. I'm not bummed. I'm like, 30 people watch that. That's still crazy to me.
Yeah.
And that 30 views, we just signed a contract for our production company. It brought in $40,000. We'll probably do 6 figures this year with that guy, with one of the views
That's amazing.
that watched it. And then we've actually, for some of our referral partners, we got them signed a $3,200 contract from this episode as well. And that's where, like, for me, actually, when I first started building the studio, I only built it because I was like, I don't have to be here every day eventually. Like, I had no passion for this at all. And then we started doing it, and I was big on like, okay, we need to see who we are and who comes to us naturally before we start advertising. Like we'll put stuff out there to, like, this is what we're doing, but let's see what our clients need before we become what we are.
Yeah.
And so then started doing it, started realizing more of the power of podcasting as well, and realizing, for like a small business owner, this opens doors. And that one door that opened that you couldn't open before could literally change the entire trajectory of your business. That 130 view episode could literally generate you 5 figures of income, and you 100%. Spent maybe $500 to get this episode done. So like your cost 100%. To entry is really low. And that's what gets me excited, is like, we can help these small business owners not waste money. And in fact, if you come through the studio, I'll talk to you and be like, okay, this isn't a good fit for you. Spend your money over here. Do this type of campaign instead. Yeah. Do some man on the street stuff on the strip. That'll be better for you than being in here, because we don't like people wasting their money with us. And that's when I was like 6 months into this, I was like, we have to provide more support. Yeah. We can't just be lights and cameras. We have to be not necessarily strategists, but their support. We have to guide them. We have to help them. Yeah. And then our thing is like, we're not going to charge you for that. We'll just give you our opinions, give you our advice. And then we became more of like a connection hub. Like, we have clients that do business with clients because we introduce them because it's a good fit. And then that gets me going. Like, that's the stuff that gets me pumped about the studio. And then I was like, ooh, I like the studio now. Yeah. It's not just cameras and lights. We're actually like changing lives. And that's been really cool to see. And so like, I get what you're saying. And I think we probably have to focus more on our own stuff, talking about that versus like, here's ways to do this better.
Yeah. And I say, like, I'm starting to change my language to more of like contrarian approach, because I think it can be a contrarian belief or a contrarian action. Meaning, if every podcast studio in town, the moment somebody walks in for a tour, is really pushy or whatever, or the moment that the recording is done and they give you the assets, it's over. You could push the fact that, no, like, we're here to help you with like a plan. I don't know if that's what you guys do, but like, whatever your difference is in how you approach that thing that a lot of people complain about, that seems like a really good move, right? To amplify that. And so I could give you example after example of this. Apple came onto the scene, and they had a completely different approach to developing a computer. When you think of Apple, you don't think of processing power, you think of design, right? And that is completely different than all the other characters that were coming up at the same time. And so I just think it's the way, the simplest way to define it is, it's the way you differentiate yourself from your competition.
So with business, right? I think a lot of people see someone like you or like an Alex Hermosi or even a Gary V, like somebody that blows up online and they think, oh, they have everything figured out. They know what they're doing. This isn't scary for them, but it's scary for me. Like, is that true? Are you just like, what scares you the most about building your business, about being a public figure?
The people that rely on me, I guess. I've hired members onto my team and I care about them a lot. And so I think the biggest thing is I just want to make sure that I show up correctly for them in all the ways that means. I think the other fear, I guess, that I have is, and this is something I talked about in I think maybe our third video that we put out, which is the audience misunderstanding what I'm saying and applying what I say incorrectly. That's been a huge fear from the beginning. Because like I said in the beginning, I've not been too hot on myself thinking that I'm hot shit or anything. I've never thought of myself as a really articulate person that's good at communication. That's why I always would say things like, I'm behind the camera for a reason. The people I work with are the ones that need to be in front. I'll always be behind. I suck at, I said all those things. And so I think that's been the biggest fear that I have really is like, and it's why I put so much, it's why Trevor and I will beat up every outline so much to think through like, is this actually useful? It might be true, but is it useful? If it's not, then why do we need to share it? It does nothing for the audience, right? Okay, cool. It's true. It's useful. Is it simple to understand? Like, will they actually get what I'm saying, or is this too complex in how I'm currently communicating it? Okay, well, we've got the complexity down. It's simple to understand. Now, is what I'm saying actually true in multiple scenarios, or is it just true in mine or in places that I have worked in the past, right? We think through that through, I won't say everything we put out, but almost everything that we put out, because it's my biggest fear. I see it happen all the time with other creators where, they have like a in-person event, somebody comes for the Q&A and they're like, hey, you said this in this video, I did this and it led to this. And they're like, no, you misunderstood it. And I've seen that with people that I work for. And so that is like a terrifying thing for me. That's why we put so much effort in trying to make sure that everything is understandable. But it's still at a certain level outside of my control. And so that's something that I have had to determine that I do everything that I have the power to do. And then I just gotta, I don't know, Jesus take the wheel or some Carrie Underwood shit, I just gotta hope that it works out well and that the audience interprets it correctly.
I think a lot of creatives have a lot of self-doubt, a lot of maybe not necessarily self-hatred, but a lot of like, I create to prove that I'm worth something, like self-worth issues. Do you ever struggle with that, like with the growing the business? Do you ever feel like I'm not good enough to do this? I'm not.
All the time, man. And I would say, I agree with you. I would just chicken or the egg. I'd say people who have low self-worth often find themselves in creative fields, right? They often find themselves in other fields too. But yeah, I deal with that all the time, man. Like the classic term that everyone talks about, and I hate saying it because it lumps me into that cheeky thing, is like the imposter syndrome bullshit, right? But it's so real. If you look at my career, if you go to like my LinkedIn experience page and look at every jump that I've made, there's not been a single one on there that I was qualified for when I took it. And so I feel this way, but I've trained myself to be very comfy in this feeling. Relatively comfy, to be very clear. But that's what I've done. And so that's what I recommend a lot of people do is you can act despite feeling like you aren't the guy or the gal, right? You can act despite feeling like you're not worthy of this. And that's what I try to do. Like, there's been a lot of things that we've done. There's a project that Trevor and I are working on right now that is stupid. It's wildly audacious. We've bitten off more than we can chew, probably. But we're going to try. We're going to try. And if we deliver, everyone will be blown the fuck away. And I think we will. But the whole time going into it, like, he's doing a ton of things for the first time on this project that he's never done before. I'm doing a ton of things that I've never done on this project before. And there was a moment we took a whole week that we blocked, rented an Airbnb to work on the pre-production for this project. Whole week, all day, every day, just dedicated to writing this. And about, I don't know, maybe halfway through second night or something, we're like looking at each other, and we were supposed to be way further along in the outlining process. But for us, when we write, we continue to, back to the point that I made earlier, we'll write something and it's like, this is fucking good. But in order to make sure the audience really acts on this correctly, they need to understand this. And so it just, that's why our outlines start with like, oh, this will be a 5-page outline. It ends up being a 25-page outline. And we're both going into this, but we had a moment, where we looked at each other and we were like, is this realistic, dude? Like, do you actually think that we can pull this off? And we both kind of left being like, no, it might not be realistic, but we're going to do everything that we can and we're going to show up, right? And I felt that way with the course. Like, I don't think we have this moment on camera, but there's a moment on day 2, actually, not day 3, day 2, where we had just wrapped filming one of the sections and we transitioned over to do the content section. And this is my second YouTube video like this that I've ever made, right? Second YouTube video doing fucking 3 days in a row of filming all day, 12-hour days. It's exhausting. And I got to a point where I was like, holy shit, my brain doesn't feel like it's processing. Like, I have my outline over here and I'm like on the fringes. I talked more probably during those 3 days than I did the entire year leading up to that. I'm not a very, like, I got the gift of gab a little bit, but I'm also an introvert. I tend to be more quiet. And I remember, though, a friend of mine, Dustin, was starting a new role at the time, and he was like leading and building this team and this initiative within a fairly large organization. And so I knew a lot of the things that I was sharing he needed. And so I just kept literally out loud, I think I said, like, this is, I probably yelled it because I was trying to amp myself up after I choked my 5th monster of the day. And I'm like, this is for fucking Dustin. This isn't for me. And so I think the little thing that I'm trying to get at here is, if you make it about you and you don't feel worthy and you don't feel like you're the right person to do it, well, you might stop there. But if you make it about other people and it's something outside yourself, if you're like me, you will stick with it. Does that make sense? No, I'm externally motivated more than internally.
Yeah, that's almost exactly the way I'm working as well. It's like, I mean, even like I've been doing video production for 20 years, and even still I'll show up on a shoot, and in my head I'm thinking, this will be the day they find out that I don't know what I'm doing. You know? Yeah. I feel that every single shoot. And then with the studio, like especially early on, but even honestly today, right? We're about 2.5 years into this. It's still small, still trying to grow it. I still struggle with like, we're not good enough. Nobody's going to want us. I don't know how to actually do this. And that's like always been like my biggest struggle. So then I have to remember like, no, like we've already changed this person's life. Like this person's been in the studio and they've been able to, you know, generate revenue. They've changed their business trajectory because they've been in here, you know, or this person's been in here. Like we're impacting lives. And so I have to think about those specific people. I'm like, I need to build it for more people like them and not worry about like, that I'm not good enough, because that's not there every single day.
You know, something interesting just came to mind, and I never really talk like this, but and this is definitely outside of my wheelhouse, but I'm going to go here for just a very quick second. And I'm not going to say it in a declarative statement. It's what I have done. Like full transparency, I'm the guy that every night before I go to bed, I'm laying there and thinking through all the mistakes that I made that day. And like literally my girlfriend will be like, what? Because I just went, fuck, out loud, right? Like I beat myself up hardcore like that. I've gotten a lot better over the last couple of years, but I have historically always been that person. And the thing that has been most effective for me in that is surrounding myself with people who are like that and operate differently. Andy Kranak, the head of Team Gary V, when I was on the team, he, from many conversations that we had, is very similar in this way of thinking. But I observed how he would push past that with this like incredible self-belief. Like he might have that immediate thought, but then boom, right afterwards, he would counter it with this incredible belief in himself. And it was because he just knew that even though he was never qualified for the things that he was taking on, he just showed the fuck up and did it regardless, right? And I saw that in him, and I admired it so much. And still to this day, it's like one of the things that I admire most about Andy. And I realized I can do the same thing because that's been my life. Everything that I've done, I've never been qualified for, but I still fucking do it. So this next thing that I'm scared shitless about, well, I can just keep doing what I've always done, you know, and just keep the momentum rolling in that direction. But yeah, like to actually answer your question, I took it in a different direction. Yeah, everybody thinks that. Everybody thinks that. Like, I guarantee. The only person that maybe I sometimes question if they go there is Gary.
Right.
And I can say that from being very close to the man for a significant portion of time. Like, I don't really see that man doubt himself. He's got an unbelievable amount of confidence is the word that a lot of people use. I would say self-love. I think he loves himself. And because of that, he believes in himself. But other than him, yeah, I'd say everybody else definitely deals with that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he does too. I don't want to speak for Gary. I'm just saying that man has a different level than most.
Probably a lot lighter.
Oh, I imagine. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because I saw a quote once, and it was like, basically there's two types of entrepreneurs. The one that's like, just they know they're destined for greatness. They know that they can do these things. And then the person who's like, I'm building to prove that I am worth something. And I definitely fall more on that side of like the self-worth, right? That's why I got in the creative field. And that's something like you were talking about, like kind of surrounding yourselves. I actually started like a little entrepreneur meetup. That's mainly like some clients, people with similar feelings, all along different journeys of it. And I call it basically like an AA meeting for entrepreneurs, where we just get around and just like, this isn't about business cards. This isn't about anything else. There's no sales. There's no marketing. There's no, like, this is just like, what are you struggling with right now? And then how do we get through this together?
That's cool.
You know, or I've been through this before too. Like, this is how I got through it. And that's been helpful. We do like once a month. That's been really cool. You know, I want to be respectful of your time and kind of wrap up here. The last thing I kind of just want to bring up is, you know, since we are a podcast about podcasting for podcasters and podcasting with business podcasting, lots of podcast. You know, you've been on a ton of podcasts, right? Since blowing up, you've been on some really big ones, and you've even come on shows, ours with no following. But for those of you watching, thanks for watching.
Very much. Thank you.
Big time. Why are you willing to go on as many podcasts as you're going on? How important is it for building your brand? You know, because you meet some people and they're like, oh, you have no following, I'm not going to go there. Like, why? What's the value in it for you?
I think I try to practice through humility. I don't think that I'm more than I actually am. And so I consider it a great honor that you are giving me this opportunity to talk about something that I love to talk about. I think it's wild that people want to talk to me. I've worked for the people that everybody wants to talk to. And the fact that anybody reaches out, like, I am always unbelievably honored and flattered by it. So that's the first one, like on a human level. I think the other thing is I want to get better at communicating, and I view it as a vehicle to get reps in. And so even if a show, like what's funny is a lot of people view podcast guesting as a strategy to grow in awareness. And in our first year, that was a beautiful byproduct, but that wasn't the intention. The intention was for me to refine my ability to communicate my thoughts. This is the second podcast that I've done in the last 3 months because I think like middle of October, I told the team, I was like, I want to stop for a second. I feel like I'm doing a lot, saying a lot of the same things. I want to take a step back, do some thinking, and just take a little hiatus from it. And I feel like this is going really well, but I'm re-warming up the cobwebs, right? I haven't done one in a little bit or whatever. But the goal for me in the first year was I want to improve how I communicate these thoughts. I would speak to internal teams. I would talk to, at certain companies that I worked for, we would have people come out for events and I would do roundtables and answer questions and stuff like that. But I never once was my primary focus communication. It just has never been a thing. And now that's all I do. I communicate in content, I communicate with clients, and I communicate with my team. And so I wanted to get better at that. And the only way to get better at it is to do more of it. And so how audacious of me as I'm trying to get better to be choosy about like that. I don't know. I laugh at that, you know? I've worked with and worked for people that are that way. And there's a certain level that they will do. And then I've worked for people like Gary, who, if you search Gary's name, there are hundreds of podcasts that have less than 200 views. Tons. That man has done so many. And he's not doing it for the reason that I am, right? The second benefit that I do see to it is there's a chance, oh man, this feels douchey saying, so please hear this through a humble tone. There's a chance that because things are going pretty well for us with our brand, that me doing somebody else's podcast might bring more attention to their show. And I'm assuming if they're reaching out, they probably consume my stuff and are part of the audience at some level. I'm grateful for that. And so I want to, in whatever tiny little way I can, pay it back. Even though a lot of people would say, well, you're doing that already with the free content, I want to do more, you know? And so I want to do that. I want to connect with more people. And so, yeah, I just see so many benefits to it. And I think people overthink it radically. The thing that you really should, the only thing you should overthink is, and what I will say is we don't say yes to everybody because some people, the guests that they bring on, I don't want to get lumped into that crowd, right? Or there's other, actually, what's really interesting is there's podcasters out there that do an incredible job interviewing, and I like even the guests, a lot of guests that they have. But one thing I've noticed that's emerging right now is they try to create controversy. So they'll take somebody else in your industry and say, so-and-so is doing this. What's your opinion on it or whatever? And I call it the call-out creator. I never want to be that person. I do not want to be that. Like Trevor and I were talking about a packaging idea for a video that's coming out on Friday around a thumbnail. And we had an example from, I think it was, I can't remember what the niche was, but the thumbnail had like copy on it, and then it pointed an arrow to a cell phone, like an iPhone with a prominent influencer on it. And the copy was like, don't do this. And it was pointing to them. And even though I agree, like, don't do what they're doing, I'm not going to do that. Like, that's just not me. And so that's another thing that I try to filter. And now actually Trevor filters. I don't make the decisions anymore because I've given them the framework of how to make these decisions. Every once in a while he'll come to me and be like, hey, this is one that I'm thinking about. I'm unsure. But that's the only thing that I think people should be really thinking about, especially in the beginning. Maybe if you have like 20 million fucking followers, okay, cool. Let's have a more nuanced strategy to this. But for 99% of people that hear this or watch this, you should just do more. But make sure that this is the matrix, I guess, if you will. If this podcast got 100 million views, would you be proud of 100 million people seeing you paired with this other person? If the answer is not yes, don't do it.
Yeah. I like that, man. You've been crushing it. Like, honestly, like even talking about the thumbnails and stuff, like I think it just makes you guys more relatable because they're not so clickbaity. It's not so cheesy. And for someone like me that's been in marketing, that's been in the creative field, like I'm just so tired of that stuff. That like seeing your content, once again, was like refreshing. It was like, oh, this is a guy who thinks like me, talks like me, is tired of the same stuff, articulates it very well. You know, you do a great job with it, and you're super relatable. All the content you put out there. Yeah, when we filled out the form for you to come on, I told my wife, I was like, I'd be so pumped to get him on, but I was like, he's not going to say yes. I was like, I put like, we have like 0 to 20 or whatever on there. I was like, he's not going to come on. And then when we got the email, I was like, dang, like I've been pumped to have you in here. So I appreciate you coming in.
Absolutely.
And honestly, I appreciate the content you're putting out there. Like, I can't wait to see what you become and how much further you guys go and the brands that you work with and the lives that you transform. Because you guys, like I said, like the second I saw some content, I was like, oh, this is like, this guy's like, I was like surprised you weren't already somebody. I was like, he just started. Like, this is crazy. You guys are doing a great job taking over. And like, I see you constantly. I don't follow very many people like in general. And like you guys are, well, someone I was like, yep, follow, subscribe. I think I subscribed to 2 YouTube pages.
Oh, wow. Like my junior high, or high school powerlifting channel?
No, so I subscribed to your guys' now. And then I subscribed to a skateboarding podcast, and that's it.
I'm honored.
I don't subscribe to anything ever.
That's
like
fucking
even
cool.
Gary V. Like I loved his content, but it was a little like too much like yelling for me,
Okay, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And too much of just saying. And yours was just way more relatable. And like Alex, obviously I look up his stuff, I listen to him, but yours was like, no, I want to see more of what this guy's doing. Like, you guys are crushing it. I'm excited for you guys. For people that are looking out there that need help with their branding, that need help with creative strategy, how do they reach out and find you?
Search how to build a personal brand on YouTube and watch the free 6.5 hour course. Download the workbook, go through that. If you actually go through all of that, then let's talk. And if you've gone through all of that, you'll be able to easily figure out a way to talk. But the easiest thing is the free thing. And that's what I would point people to.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it.